Okay, so second last Facebook Live for this week, and welcome if you are tuning in late or if you are watching this at a later stage. I'm going to, as usual, just start right ahead, even if people haven't joined yet, just because I don't even know how many people will join or not. So today I want to talk about why I never recommend food substitutes anymore. So I just love this topic, and the reason that I love it so much is probably because I guess I'm a little bit like those people that just all of a sudden have seen the light and they convert it to their god of choice, whatever, and they get very excited about it. And I think the reason here is that God, I got itchy nose. For as long as I can remember that I've actually wanted to, or I tried to quit sugar, I have also tried to substitute sugar with something else. And I never really questioned why I was doing this. Obviously, if no one had ever come up with the idea of substituting, I wouldn't even thought about it probably. I would just have tried to quit sugar without replacing it with something else. But in the society that we live in today, we are so afraid of being uncomfortable. It's like we are unable to be uncomfortable, and if we are suffering miserably. And this is really, really strange when you think about it. So when you think about how we have evolved, we evolved sleeping on a cave floor in a very cold cave. We may or may not have had a fire. Maybe if they were living where I live in on the rainy grey west coast of New Zealand, at the moment it's raining all the bloody time. So would I have had any dry firewood? I don't know. Maybe I would have been extremely cold, been sitting on the cave floor. I had still to, it was necessary for me to go out or maybe starve to death, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to even get a fire. And people lived in these conditions. So now I'm sitting here and I wake up in the morning and it might be 10 to 14 degrees inside the house, and I'm pissed off about that because it's so bloody cold. I am from Sweden originally, but we do have insulation in our houses and we have triple glazing, and it's actually nice and cozy and it's all good. But here it's like, it's usually not that cold, so what's the problem? So no one really thought about that, but we're working on that. So we're just not very tolerant to having these stressors in our life, to being uncomfortable. And now I'm talking about both physiologically and mentally. So this is the thing with like exercise. I have been exercising most of my life. I'm not exercising right now, but I've been exercising for most of my life, and usually in the form of weightlifting because that's what I enjoy most. And it is not pleasant while you're doing it, but when you finish, it's actually really nice because it feels like you've done something, you've been using your body and you accomplished something. And it's the same thing with those cravings. It's not pleasant while you're doing it, but when you're done with it, when you know how to do this, when you have overcome them, that is on a whole different level. So now I'm getting off topic again because I'm just following a non-red thread, I guess. So back to the food substitutes. So we just really want to make ourselves as comfortable as possible because that's what we do, and we have always done that, and that has been a good thing when we have been evolving, because that way we have been planning better. We collected our firewood earlier so that we could get it dry on time when we actually need it. We started building better houses than these little shelters that we had maybe, and so on. So we have kept developing and got better and better things as evolution has progressed, because we want to make our lives as comfortable. From riding horses to having carriages behind the horses so that everyone can sit there comfortably rather than sitting on a horse, which can be uncomfortable if you're not used to it, and having cars and so on. So it's a really good thing that we're seeking out being comfortable, but when it comes to emotional comfort, it might not always be a good thing, because we're so unwilling to feel this that we are rather eating a lot of sugar that we don't want to eat than feeling these emotions. So now, if whenever I have tried to quit sugar in the past, I have always made damn sure that I have a good substitute, or try to find a good substitute. So I can't even tell you how many different kind of low-carb brownies I have tried out. Some with flowers, as in nut flowers or something similar, and some without it. I have made these low-carb bounty bars, if you know the coconut things dipped in chocolate. And those were really, really good. They were very close to the real ones, but obviously not quite, because it wasn't real sugar in them. Made ice creams, like the bulletproof ice cream. I have made almost like normal ice cream, but with a sugar substitute rather than the sugar. Flavored butter with cocoa powder, or with cocoa powder and licorice root. That is delicious, by the way. Yeah, so I made my own low carb chocolate, and I never really got that right. And I used to feed that to my boyfriend, because I don't like eating things that I don't like, and he seemed to think that they were actually quite nice. I don't really agree. So if you were to ask me, why did you make all these treats then? And I think you know the answer to that, and that is just that I just didn't want to be without the treats in my life, the dessert, or I just needed something to curb my cravings. And I think I needed the dessert, to be able to go on this low carb diet. It was like I was making some sort of sacrifice by going on this low carb diet. And since I'm cutting out sugar, because the diet in itself wasn't a problem for me, I used to like pasta and bread and that sort of things, but I gave that up long before I even went on a low carb diet, actually. So for me, it was probably just okay, I have given up sugar, so I deserve something else to replace it. So I think that is a lot what it was, that I wasn't really aware that I could get rid of my cravings. So of course, since there is an option that I can use a substitute, I will do that to try and, go through this process more smoothly and make it sustainable over time. So with that said, I think for both me and most of my clients, there are three core things I think that most of us experience. So the first one would be that since we are having a substitute, it is not sugar. And we have a craving for sugar, and then we eat this instead. Since it's not quite sugar, it doesn't really hit the spot. It might feel okay, but you haven't really satisfied the craving. So when we do this, you may think of yourself like, you kind of almost suppress this natural craving that you have, the first craving that you have. So you keep eating these treats that don't really satisfy you. So you're kind of pushing back the real craving, and you're giving it a little bit of what it wants, but it's not quite right. So what will happen eventually, the day comes when you're going to give in. And most people will at this point just go crazy and start binging on sugar. And okay, so today I am just going to give in, and I am going to have pizza and ice cream and cookies and soda, and then I want a huge cream cake on top of that, and we just get the whole buffet out, and we just kind of go a little bit nuts. And that's because we've been suppressing this for so long. So if you think about, one of these buoys that are floating out in the water, if you're pushing it down and holding it down, it requires quite a lot of effort. And when you let go, it's going to knock you down because you've been pushing against it so much. And that's pretty much what you do with your cravings when you either resist them or when you are trying to substitute with something else that is not quite actually what you crave, because you will still have it. It's just that you put it in the back of your mind, so you might not notice right now, or you're trying to ignore it. So the second thing I see quite often is that we start to crave the low-carb treats. So we're basically swapping one addiction for another. So we are stop eating the sugar and we stop rewarding that pathway, and instead we're so focused on the low-carb treats, and now our whole world and the brain activity is focusing on getting these treats right. Maybe some people are just obsessively following all these blogs or Facebook groups with low-carb treats and so on. Some of you might start your own blog or Facebook groups and just share whatever recipes you are creating, because you're a very creative cook and you're just managing to create this whole array of really, really good stuff that tastes really, really good. Like not like sugar, because I haven't yet come across a single keto treat or similar that tastes like as if there was sugar in. So I can obviously tell, but some of them are really good and they're very close. So that can also happen, that you have, so now you have your old neural pathway, which will trigger the sugar cravings, and you have a new one which will trigger cravings for your low carb treats. So you might think that this is better. Yeah, I think from a physiological perspective, it is better, because you will not have the same hormonal response as you will get to sugar, and that's good. However, you still have the cravings. And as long as you have cravings, this is going to drive you a little bit nuts. It's going to be up in your head, and it's going to, you're going to have those little voices, go and do this, go and eat that, and try to do this, blah, blah, blah. So some people actually gain weight when they get these cravings for the low carb treats, because they're eating so much of it. And there might be two components to this. A, that they are pretty much addicted to these treats now, and they have these cravings and they're giving into them. And B, that since it is not sugar, it doesn't quite satisfy them, so they keep eating and eating and eating in the hope that it will satisfy that craving in the end. And it won't, because it is not sugar. When you have a sugar craving, the only thing that can curb that craving is sugar. If you have a craving to smoke a cigarette, the only thing that will take care of that craving is actually smoking the cigarette. And I think people that use all these nicotine plasters or pills or whatever can attest to that. It's just a way of getting rid of the physical withdrawal symptoms, because you're still getting nicotine, but the mental bit and whatever you're doing with your hands and the whole habit and the ritual of it is still there, and you're still going to want it. So this is the same thing. When we have a low carb one, our hormones might improve, and we don't have the withdrawal symptoms to deal with, which is great, because that's not pleasant. But we have this whole mental aspect, and I deserve this, and this is part of life, and we just glorify eating desserts or sugar because that is something that we associate with having been good, or we deserve it, and it's some sort of reward, which it is in our brain, but we don't have to necessarily reward ourselves for having done hard things during the day, or being stressed out at work, or whatever it could be. So the last one then is, obviously, you don't decondition your brain. You still have this pathway, which will say, I'm just repeating myself here, but you see the cake, you get the craving, you eat the cake. That pathway will still be there, and you're not dealing with those cravings. So the problem here is that when you are, the problem isn't that you are eating the sugar. The problem is that you have the craving. So when we don't address the craving for whatever reason, when we just let it be there by substituting our sugar with something else, we're still having the problem. So the big problem here is that we could potentially keep doing this forever. But my experience and what I see with other people is that at some point they're gonna fall off the wagon. They're not going to be able to withstand this craving. It's like it's just there boiling, and sometimes it's just simmering a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's going to boil over the top. So overall, you might be better off than if you were giving into your cravings all the time, sure, and you don't keep reinforcing this pathway. That is good, but it's still there because you haven't dealt with the underlying problem. You don't know how to deal with the cravings yet. And if you don't know how to actually manage those cravings, when this craving becomes too strong, you're going to give in once again. And once that happens, it's like hell breaks loose, unfortunately, for most people. So if we then just take away the craving, we have solved the problem. Yay! And that sounds so easy, and it is actually not too hard. So I just want to ask you one question now. If you could choose, would you rather have the cravings and eat something that didn't quite hit the spot, like a low-carb treat, but it's still really nice, so that you have the opportunity to satisfy that craving? Or would you rather not have the craving in the first place? So this might sound pretty like a very simple choice. So do I want to keep having these cravings and just have my low carb treat and be happy with that and know that I don't necessarily, let's say you could choose that and know that you're not going to have a binge in the future on sugar. So you could just go down that road and you could stay there forever. Would you rather do that than not have the cravings for sugar in the first place? And I know for a fact that some of you might choose to still have the craving and eat the low carb treat because that is the easy way out. And when I say the easy way out, I could still offer you to not have the cravings at all and it wouldn't cost you anything. But this is what we do. We are comfortable with this behavior that we have. And this is crazy. But when we're doing something and we're used to doing it, we're very comfortable in that space because we know what the consequences are. We know exactly what is going to happen. And we're cool with that. We know that there's some cost to it and that we're going to have this food chatter in our brains. You should be eating this. Come on, go and eat that. We want more and all that. But it's still comfortable for most of you because you know how that feels and you can deal with it. You know exactly what's going to happen down the line. You know how to handle that. But when I say I could take your cravings away, notice what's coming up for you then. Because for some people, it's almost like a panic reaction. It's like, ah, but if I don't have food, I don't have anything in my life anymore. And I hear you. I totally understand you because I can understand the satisfaction of giving in to a craving in the moment. It's almost like pure bliss because when you crave something and you get it, it's such a relief. And I totally get that. But what I want to offer you is that on the other side is so much more that you could achieve and that you could feel, and that feels really, really good. So not having those cravings at all, if you could just get rid of them, what that means is that it's freeing up a lot of brain space and a lot of space for you to enjoy other things. So if you watched my videos early this week, you would know about what was I going to say? I totally lost myself there. You would know about the reward system. So under dopamine release. So I said that, for example, I'm just picking these numbers because it's easy to picture that So a chocolate cake will give you a dopamine release of 8, and a steak will give you a dopamine release of 4. So your brain will think that the chocolate cake is twice as important, and it's going to give you twice the satisfaction of eating a chocolate cake compared to eating a steak. When we don't have this excess dopamine release, our brain will go back to the baseline, what it has been evolved to actually detect, and where a 4 on the dopamine release scale is actually pretty satisfying. It's not over satisfying, it's not over the top like a chocolate cake, but it gives us satisfaction. So I can give you a silly example. If someone had said to me, Pim, you really need to start appreciate and enjoy the things that you have in your life because you're privileged. I have always been pretty good at appreciating and enjoying things in my life. Some things, not all things. And one of those things would be, for example, going out in nature for a walk with my dogs. I absolutely love them to bits, and I love watching them when they are just being dogs, because they get really excited by the smells and chasing little birds. And when my little dog is just running after the birds and barking like a mad dog, I can't help but laughing pretty much every time. And I just think that is hilarious. And I just love watching that. But even without the dogs I've always been able to appreciate them because I just love them so much. But what I can do is I can literally sit down on the ground, close my eyes, and just feel the wind in my face. I feel a sense of relief and satisfaction. When you are thinking about food all the time, and that brain space is just being taken up by that other voice that is urging you to look for food or think about food, or what are you going to buy next, what are you going to eat next, and why are you not eating right now, and you're all stressed out, you really should go home and eat a bowl of popcorn, and so on. When you have that chatter in your head constantly, you're not going to be able to enjoy these things. And sitting on the ground with the wind in my face might just give me a dopamine release of 2. And when you're used to having the dopamine release of 8, a 2 won't cut it. You won't be able to appreciate it no matter how much you want. It just won't feel the same. So overall, I wouldn't say your happiness, but your sense of satisfaction and feeling whole and things feel right for you. And it's almost like, obviously this is what we have done, but it feels like this is what I have evolved to feel, and this is a life that I should be appreciating this way. It's like you just resetting everything and you go back and you just start appreciating these things magically. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to engage in those gratification theories and writing down everything you're grateful for and that sort of thing. It just kind of comes naturally. You just start appreciating things more, natural things, which is really, really nice. So yeah, I would like to ask you, why are you substituting? Is it because you still have cravings? And if you do, what sort of cravings do you have? Is it cravings for the sugar? Is it cravings for the substitute? What are you craving? So what is the problem here? And then also ask yourself, are you okay with these cravings taking up your brain space? Are you happy with that? If you are, if the answer is yes, then just keep doing it. I mean, I believe everyone should have a choice to decide what they want to do, but I think it should be a choice based on based on your knowledge, to know that you know that I can actually choose for real to either have the cravings and keep doing what I'm doing, or I can choose not to have cravings. I can choose to deal with those and then get over it and not have the cravings at all. And I think for many people, we don't really know, and we're not convinced that we can get rid of our cravings. So we would just rather say, nah, I'm staying safe and I will stay here and I will rather have these cravings because I'm not prepared to set myself up for another struggle and another failure. And unfortunately, that's probably been me a few times, but there's obviously, I think there's a way of doing this, and I have yet to see someone actually fail doing it. I haven't had a single client fail so far, so that's good stuff. That's also happening when people are paying money for doing something. They are usually more dedicated to actually dig into the problem. So, but if you do not want to have these cravings, then I would suggest that you just deal with that. And the problem here is that we are having cravings. The problem is not that you're eating sugar, it's the cravings for the sugar. So again, you can go back to, I think it was 3 days ago, the video Not Eating Sugar is Easy, and just have a look at that video again. I'm explaining how to actually just be with the cravings and how to get over these there. So you can practice that process. So I hope that all of this makes sense and that I have convinced you that there is something better in life than giving into your cravings. I know that in the moment it feels like that is the best thing that you could possibly do in your whole life, and every time we do it, it feels like that. But then when we're out of it, we're going down and it doesn't feel so nice anymore. So it's better to find this, this more level dopamine response and release in your brain so that you can appreciate more things on a more even level, and you won't get the downs either. And that is actually overall, it's like a net win. If you're counting how much pleasure you have from all those small things together, I believe that you're getting a lot more pleasure out of that than you are getting from just having a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So yeah, I think that was all for today. Thank you so much for watching and for being here. I really, really like this topic. I think it's fascinating. So I failed a little bit the other day when I put my YouTube link up, but please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel as well to help me spread the message and grow that channel, and that will benefit us all. So thank you very much. Take care, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.